Namaste and welcome to another edition of the Bharatvaarta Weekly. I'm Roshan Cariappa. I have with me Abhishek and Nirav Kanodra to run you through the news and events of the week that was. And this week's news cycle was majorly dominated by Prime Minister Modi's historic visit to the US. It's his first state visit to the US on the invitation of President Biden. This visit signifies a historic shift in the India-US ties as the meeting yields several vital agreements. There was some great press as well about it, and of course, the usual suspects, criticizing and critiquing a bunch of things. Nirav, there was a lot of anticipation on Modi's visit to the US. What were the highlights for you?
Yeah, sure. So, you have to break up Modi's visit in a few parts. So, first he was in New York. There he met a lot of the business leaders, right? There he met the CEO of Apple. He met Elon Musk of Tesla, Sundar Pichai of Google, and so on and so forth, and Micron semiconductors. So these are quite key. So that part, you can say, one part was meeting with American business leaders and trying and working out how they can set up plants or services in India. Some key wins are Micron Semiconductors is interested in putting up a semiconductor plant in India, probably in Gujarat. Google CEO Sundar Pichai said that Google will set up data centers and in Gift City. Also, there is talk about assembly of Google Pixel phones. So that's another one. And Tesla, Elon Musk said that he's considering India as to assemble Tesla cars. So there's a big manufacturing facility in China already, outskirts of Shanghai. They have in the US, they're building more like the battery factory or the giga factory as he calls it. And there's a lot of talk about a lot of hardware manufacturing with Dell, HP and the likes. But none of that has been really announced. So that is part one. And again, we need to be careful not to get too overexcited. We had the nuclear deal with the US and nothing really came out of it. When Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister about 14 years ago. And then moving on. So he went to the White House, had a meeting with Biden. There's a lot of talk about furthering India-US trade, cooperation. There's also talk with GE to set up a combined manufacturing JV with Hindustan Aeronautic Limited to make aircraft engine for light combat aircraft. So for Indian made Tejas fighter jets. So for light combat aircraft. So that's another big win. He addressed the joint session of the Congress, so of the House, as they call it. So the Senate plus the House, and he gave a speech that was quite interesting. He said AI is not just artificial intelligence, but America and India.
Yeah.
And he pointed out to the Indian diaspora doing well in the US, being members of the Congress, and including the Vice President Kamala Harris, right? So those are the positive remarks made. One of the sad thing was in the press conference, only one reporter was asked if she could ask a question. That was Sabrina Siddiqui of Wall Street Journal, and she wasted the question. She could have asked about India-US ties, possible free trade agreement, a possible cooperation on. So Wall Street Journal is a business newspaper, so would have been more economic cooperation rather than strategic or defense cooperation. But instead she chose on a topic about sliding democracy or the plight of minorities, etc. Which was observed, and what kind of answer Modi is going to give. So what additional, all that does is just reinforces your stereotype, whatever you had before. It doesn't give any additional information. There's also events for the Indian diaspora, which was held. And another one, what I felt was Atish Tasir comments on Twitter that it's all the B team of the Indian diaspora. And he ignored that maybe people have different preferences, people have different people in their all-star team. But you had Satya Nadella, Sundar Pichai, and all Shantanu Narayan of Adobe, and you had a lot of others, right? They were all there, and maybe, I don't know, woke influencers, social media stars
but
weren't.
Priyanka Chopra wasn't there.
Priyanka Chopra and Padma Lakshmi weren't, right?
Yeah.
So, exactly. So, I think, again, what I feel is India and US have a lot in common. We have a large diaspora, 4 million people of Indian origin. I would say more than 2.5 million are Indian citizens. because a lot of people have gone there and either are on green cards or on employment based visas, H1B or student visas, right? You have a lot of American businesses doing sizable business in India. Indian IT companies, basically their biggest market is the US. So there's a lot of cooperation, people to people contacts is a lot more compared to Europe, compared to China, etc. Now, second thing is politically, you've had like the countries converge on some points, diverge on some points, agree and disagree. So, like a lot of people in US were talking about how can the US align with India? With India has such a bad record on various things. But Noah Smith, he's highlighted one thing that Americans are also worried that how can India align with America's history of supporting Pakistan, right? And like supported Pakistan on the genocide in Bangladesh, etc., right? Harboring terrorists. So, anyways, besides the point, I think both the countries have a lot to gain, and working together, there if a lot of these things come up, the deals that are being signed, there's a lot of foreign direct investment in India. It's beneficial to both the countries. And lastly, trying to mention the elephant which was not there in the room, that is China. US needs a credible anti-China alternative. India is the only country which can offer that in a large scale, and it's a counterweight. So I think it's an opportunity, and when the opportunity comes knocking, you have to make the most of it. And the Modi government is trying. Again, I'm sure there'll be hiccups. There will be issues regarding land acquisition. There'll be a lot of opposition. They'll be crying out that why are certain states getting all the projects and not others, etc. Because some people still consider these projects as welfare, whereas think of it as a commercial investment. So I think that is also there. There will be hiccups and stuff, but on the whole, this is like a very big positive step and a realignment both from the US and India side. Hopefully, creates a lot of jobs, creates a lot of growth, and benefits both countries.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I want to go back to his speech, right, where I think he made a bunch of very nice remarks. One, I mean, he remembered all of the representatives who had passed away, right, including Representative John Lewis as well. I think that was a very good gesture, and it was, fairly acknowledged also. And the second thing which he mentioned, just in terms of the diversity, right, 2,500 political parties, and about 20 different parties governing different states and so on, so many languages, dialects, and so on, and still we speak in one voice. This, when you look at it in the background of, let's say, Rahul Gandhi visiting the US, a month back, right? Again, speaks to the level of statesmanship that Prime Minister Modi has. The rest of it, we've heard, mother of democracy, friendship, and so on and so forth. But I think these two things were, in my mind, a highlight. And I really loved a lot of the reactions as well, right? Elon Musk was, effusive in praise. He said he's a fan of Prime Minister Modi and that he really means well for the country. And there were a bunch of others who also spoke in similar vein, right? So fantastic stuff on all fronts. I think it's, as expected, it has been a milestone visit. Abhishek, what did you make of some of the critique? I think one of the criticisms was Prime Minister saying that, we are free after 1,000 years of occupation or something of that sort. Some people still seem to be in a bit of a disagreement that the Mughal dynasty was, they were not invaders and that they were native to India for some reason, right? So what do you make of these things?
Yeah, I think politically that is like a big sort of dividing line in India, right? Where the BJP or Hindu nationalists or nationalists feel that pre-British era, let's say, right, of British rule in India is some sort of non-foreign rule, right? I saw some Twitter exchange where I think it was Pranesh Prakash kind of pointing out that you can obviously have different viewpoints on this, but even Dr. Ambedkar has pretty much said the same things. Basically, what Narendra Modi said, right, in the speech. So it's not only Hindutva folks who feel like that. So that was one thing. I guess one additional interesting point I'll point out, um, what apart from what Nirav said, right, was India and US kind of calling out for concerted action, right, against perpetrators of 26/11, Mumbai and Pathankot attacks, etc. Right? Basically, pretty much calling out Pakistan in the joint statement, which is a very big thing, right? And it's basically caused a lot of heartburn in Islamabad, right? Including statements from Imran Khan and all coming out very quickly after that, right? To condemn it. So I thought that was a good sort of signal that, in US is, I wouldn't say completely abandoning Pakistan, but at least decisively beginning to side with India, right? Which is probably a very important thing. There were some other very important or significant things, right? Like joint mission between NASA and ISRO, India joining the Artemis Accords and so on. So in areas of civil space exploration, there will be a lot more cooperation going forward. I thought that was significant. And it was also good to see the Prime Minister meeting few of the voices who are still sort of sane and give reasonable takes about India-US commentary, right? Like Jeff Smith and Elbridge Colby, right? I think Mr. Elbridge has come on Bharatvaarta before as well, right? As part of the Velina Talk series. So good to see Prime Minister engage with people who give sort of good, sane US India commentary rather than the typical democracy in decline commentary that we see every day and what, as Nirav said, the Wall Street Journal reporter kind of pointed out. The other important or interesting or unfortunate thing in the last week, in my view, was the CNN interview of Barack Obama, right? Where,
I was just going to bring that
when
up.
asked
Yeah.
about India, he talked about, Hindu India and Muslim India and the possibility of India breaking up due to civil unrest and civil strife. I thought the way he phrased it, the way he talked about it was very unfortunate. But in terms of a bit of Schadenfreude, if you see the answer he gave on Ukraine, I have never seen Obama getting, as badly sort of criticized and, let's say, quote unquote thrashed on social media by Ukraine supporters, right? He basically said that, look, Ukrainian nationalism wasn't ready in 2014, and so he was kind of trying to defend his record, right, when the Russian invasion of Crimea happened and the US did not really step in to help. And his answer was, I would say, even worsely received than the India answer. So I would say his CNN interview in many ways was a disaster for him and his image in more ways than one.
Yeah, pretty terrible actually. I mean, you had the regular cooks, Ilan Omar or AOC, make a few of these, by now familiar remarks. But then for Obama to say something like this, right, is pretty absurd.